Well done. Doing exceptionally well. Keep up the great work. As long as you're applying effort and you're putting in the time and the energy, you're gonna realize amazing results. Okay, so let's have a look now at that opening, because remember, developing the opening is one of the most important things, because your opening, when you're talking about your C-suite decks, is about catching attention, is about showing the person that you're really there to add value. So let's have a look at what needs to be reflected in your opening. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to say, what changes have you, or has the organization, or has your industry or markets, what changes have you experienced? So what changes your organization experienced? What changes could there possibly have been in your markets? You need to have a look at your environment. You also need to have a look at international changes. I mean, right now, I think we're coming out of that, the lockdown. There's definitely major changes gone as far as customers no longer wanting to have as many face-to-face meetings. We need to, and that's the whole point of why we're going into this so extensively, is we really need to have a whole bucket full, a whole myriad of different methodologies, processes, ideas to communicate effectively with both our existing and our future customers. So when we're talking, we need to be talking around change. What changes in the markets, for example? What's new? What's different? What could affect, both positively and negatively, could affect your customers' businesses? And very important, whenever you identify these changes, you need to immediately think, okay, so if these changes have occurred, you know really well what the value proposition, you know really well what your product does for your customers. So speak to transformation. So we've experienced this change in our industry, in our markets, and by using our product or our services, you will mitigate, eliminate, or reduce the effects of those changes. Next, you want to ask, what changes or challenges are you facing currently which could negatively affect your organization's performance? So what you want to have a look at, so you're either, and let me rephrase it, you're not going to either. What you're going to do is you have got to be prepared to be successful when you're presenting to the CEO, to the C-suite. You can't arrive. Yes, of course, there's room, and I believe you should never ever present without first asking questions. So you need to have insight. But when you're going to be asking those questions, so you're presenting your CEO, your C-suite sales decks, but very important when you're doing that is to make sure that you have a deep understanding of what the changes are, what your product can do, what the challenges are, and most importantly, you need to connect what your product can do, in other words, the transformation, undesirable state, by using your product. In other words, the challenge is the undesirable state. So we talk to the challenge, the undesirable state, and by using our product or service, we will put you into a more favorable position. All right, so the next is, what companies do you see as trendsetters in the industry and why? So look to your industry. I can't keep reminding you enough times about how important that monthly SWOT analysis is. So when you're doing your monthly SWOT analysis, these are the questions that you really want to be asking. You want to be saying, what's changed on a national basis? What is happening on an international level? What's happening in my industry, my markets, at my customers? What is going on? Because once you're aware of what's going on, then you can connect what's changed, what's new, what's different to what transformation your products and services can offer. What you're doing is you're connecting the dots effectively. You're not just arriving and praying that somebody's going to want to buy what you have to sell, but you're acting in a very organized fashion, a way where you're saying, okay, so I know what my product can do, but I am engaging in a monthly SWOT analysis. So I know what my product can do, but I'm also well aware of what's new, what's changing, what's different. And this is what makes selling so exciting, is your role as a sales professional is to connect what has changed, what you can do to improve, to optimize, to make better by utilizing your product as the medium to help your customers to transform their business from the challenged, undesirable place to the desirable place because they're using your product. That makes selling easy. What you're doing there is you're showing value. In other words, you're showing what your product will do, not what it does. In other words, it's a widget or it's a gearbox. You're rather saying what it does. So by using this gearbox, the challenge that you're experiencing currently is you're having breakdowns. This product or this production line of yours, every 6 months, you're having to be down for 2-3 days while you carry out major repairs, etc. Whereas if you utilize our gearbox, it'll handle the vibration more effectively, it works better in a dust-filled environment, and because of that, so in other words, the challenge is dust-filled environment, vibration, etc. But what you're going to show, either through case studies or recorded testimonials, or better still, through an actual trial, you're going to demonstrate how your product or service will indeed offer them the challenge, lots of vibration, lots of dust. The outcome is you needing to repair your line every 6 months, but by using our gearbox with a cooler or whatever the case might be, what we can do is we will give you much more uptime, and therefore much more uptime turns into greater profitability. CEOs love when you can show them how by making a small change, how by doing something on a strategic macro level, they will be able to optimize their bottom line. Remember, the CEO's primary function is to make sure that the business remains profitable. Next, we want to have a look and say, are you planning to change the way you approach your markets in the next 12 months? So these are all questions that you need to answer, because do your research, conduct your research, have as much information when you go to the meeting as possible. But a question like this, are you planning to change the way you approach your markets in the next 12 months? A question like that, never, as I said to you, you can never present without first inquiring. So I always do that. So I often go to a meeting, even with the CEO, and we'll sit down and the guy goes, okay, so do you want to connect to the overhead projector or the data projector, and do you want to start presenting? And I go, hang on a second, I really do. I'm really prepared. I've got what I believe is a perfect solution, but I still have a few questions that I'd like to ask you. Questions like, are you planning to change the way you approach your markets in the next 12 months? Because that's very valuable information. Because if I'm making a recommendation, let's say I've identified a challenge, I have a perfect solution, and it's going to transform their business, but they're changing the way they do business. Maybe they're bringing in a new production line, or they're changing the environment. They're putting in dust extraction units or something to remove the dust. So you need to be able to answer those questions. You would not necessarily be able to find that information during your research, but you can ask those questions, and you must ask those questions when you are in front of the customer. Next, what do you see happening in the future which may impact how we supply your organization? Do you see, those are the kind of questions that you need to ask in the meeting. So never just arrive, pull out your sales deck and start presenting. Because here's the challenge, you might have missed some crucial things which you can't find during your research. So I always say, questioning always precedes presentation. And then finally, you want to know, what could we do better to satisfy the changing circumstances within your organization and industry? So you see, there's a whole lot of preparation you're going to do up front. So you've got a whole lot of questions that you're able to answer up front, but you're also going to go prepared when you're delivering that C-suite sales deck with a load of crucial questions. Questions that you can't necessarily get the answers to while you research, but very important questions that if you don't have the answers to, when you present your C-suite sales deck, you may very well find you've missed some crucial information. So questions always follows presentation. So no matter how good your sales deck is, never just arrive, pull it out and start presenting. You always want to set the tone. You always want to make sure that the customer feels heard.